Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sherlockian interview. I'm Steve Emmett, the Managing Director of Emmett Publishing, and today we have an interview with Stephen Herczeg. Hi, Stephen.
How are you?
I'm fantastic. Judging by that Antipodean accent that my deductive powers tell me that you're dialing in from down under somewhere.
Yep, Canberra, Australia, the capital.
That's fantastic. I've been to Canberra once. Many years ago, but tell us what the weather's like there.
It's freezing. It was about 8 degrees Celsius today. It was snowing yesterday. We've got snow up on the mountains. Tonight it's probably going to get down to about -2 or -3. So middle of winter.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop quitting. I'm going to quit moaning about the bit of rain that we've had here in London, and let's dive straight into your books. It's a fascinating range, I think you've got there. Let's start with these three.
Okay, so when I'm not wearing my Sherlock Holmes hat, I'm a fair bit of a horror and sci-fi writer. So Beside the Seaside is the 6th, I think, in the Things in the Well series from Things in the Well Publishing here in Australia. My little tale is actually called Whelks, and it's actually set on the Cornwall coast. It's about a family that goes and eats some of the local whelks and suddenly start turning into sea creatures to go back into the ocean when the townsfolk have finally finished transforming. So it's a strange little sort of Lovecraftian tale, if you like. Deep Space is another one from an Australian publisher. My entry in that is called Dreadlock, and it's about a cyborg who leads a sort of mercenary outfit that goes searching on another planet for, I suppose you call it a mad doctor who's creating these clones that are infiltrating the local solar systems. And it turns out that he's actually set a trap for them and try to drag in the main character, Dreadlock, to siphon his DNA off and help improve his clones. And Sea of Secrets is it's actually from an American publisher. My little tale in that is called Angels of the Deep, and it's about a set of sailors in a Russian submarine in the middle of World War II. They get marooned on the bottom of the sea, and suddenly all their lost loved ones keep visiting them inside the submarine. It turns out they're strange sea creatures that are infiltrating their memories and their mind and dragging them to their doom, sort of a cross between the sirens of old myth and a Russian submarine. So,
one of the wonderful things about working on the Emmett's book of New Sherlock Holmes stories, which we'll come on to later, is I find it really fascinating the different genres that people write in. So you seem to write in several different genres, Stephen.
Yeah, so I like horror the most. It's just my background and what I grew up with. I had a grandmother who kept showing me all the horror movies on a Friday night, stuff like that. And just grew up watching horror, reading horror, but also like science fiction. I've written a little bit of fantasy, and I love the crime stuff that comes with the realms of Sherlock Holmes and things like that as well.
Fantastic. And you've got a couple on their way as well.
Yep. So Capricorn's it's from the Australian Speculative Fiction Group. So they specialize in horror, sci-fi, fantasy, and things like that. And my entry in that is called The Judas Goat. It's sort of a dystopian future world after a massive cataclysm. And it's two brothers get sort of tricked into falling for the same woman, and then they get tricked into waking up in the middle of a locked cell and trying to find their way out of that, and they end up in the middle of a gladiator pit and have to fight each other in the end because they're confused over what's going on. And then Curses and Cauldrons is an interesting one because it's all about its drabbles, the 100-word stories, and that's it. 100 words, no less, no more, and you have to complete a complete story or tell a complete story in just those 100 words. So it was a new adventure. It seems to be short stories for the Twitter crowd, I suppose.
Fantastic. I was just going to say that that must make you a bit of a diva on Twitter now that you've managed to nail a story in 100 words.
No, I had to get rid of my Twitter account. It got hacked, and I got strange things appearing from Russian women.
Oh.
So
There you go. You definitely don't want that. Now, you participated in an awful lot of Sherlock Holmes anthologies as well. So how did you first get introduced to Holmes?
I back in primary school, I think, was probably one of the very early Holmesian sort of introductions for me. There used to be a lot of young detective stories and things like that coming out, and there seemed to be a lot of young Sherlock Holmes style stories. And so it piqued my interest, and I grew up with those. And then I moved into my teen years. I started reading things like Mickey Spillane, James Bond, and then, of course, Sherlock Holmes. And saw some of the early movies like the 7% Solution and Murder by Decree and things like that. And I think I read The Hound of the Baskervilles when I was back in high school. So that just made me fall in love with Holmes. And then, of course, in adult life, it's reading some of the stories and then seeing Sherlock and Elementary on TV, and then, of course, the Sherlock Holmes movies with Robert Downey Jr. and things like that. So just a continuous sort of exposure over the years.
Well, the anthologies that are created by by Bellinger Books. So all these three on the screen are from Bellinger. They tend to focus on anthologies that take us beyond the canon, and indeed Sherlock Holmes' Adventures Beyond the Canon is a good example. On the left, you've got Adventures in Steampunk and H.G. Wells on the right. So this gives you a chance to mix your genres a bit.
Yes. The first one I got into was the H.G. Wells one, which I used a very obscure short story that Wells wrote and placed that straight into the Holmes arena, if you like. And then I was invited to do the Adventures Beyond the Canon, which I picked up the sequel to the Adventure of the Engineer's Thumb, which was just an interesting tale, and I just took it a little bit further than that. And then the steampunk one was awesome. It was just a chance of just throwing Holmes in the middle of an incredibly weird steampunk world, and very, very much fun to write.
Fantastic. And if we go on to the MX Book of New Sherlock Holmes Stories, this is very different. So David Markham, who is the editor of this, kicked this off in 2014. He had the idea, and the first 3 volumes were launched in 2015. And the concept behind it was that David was getting a bit frustrated with the focus on non-canonical tales, in particular some of the TV and film adaptations. And he was yearning for some proper traditional canonical era stories. And we're very pleased to confirm that Publishers Weekly have just released the 9th starred review in a row for the collection. And it's a bit of an acknowledgement to David's very strict rules on this. So this is very different. So you had to fit within David's parameters of it being in the canonical era and very much in the style of Conan Doyle. How was that experience?
Yes, it requires a lot of research. So a lot of going back, a lot of reading some of the Sherlock Holmes stories I haven't read for years and going back over them in fine detail. You get anything wrong and David's on you very quickly. If you're aiming for a tale that's in a certain time period and you get something wrong, he'll be back on you straight away. So it's fascinating how much knowledge he has and how much more there is to learn about the canon. So.
Well, David's edited. I think he holds the world record for sure, and I keep encouraging him to go and talk to Guinness about it, because I think he's edited over 500 Sherlock Holmes stories now, which is quite incredible. And now there's over 380 in the collection. I've got one of the volumes here, so they are big because each volume carries 20 to 30 stories, and we're now up to 18 volumes with a Kickstarter running at the moment for 16 to 18. And you're in 3 of those. So you've got 11, 14 and 17. Tell us a little bit about the one in the latest volume, number 17.
In the latest one, this was a really interesting idea that David's put out, which is supernatural style stories that have a rational ending. So he didn't want to go outside of canon, but he wanted to give everyone a little bit more leeway with their storytelling. So one of my loves, I suppose you say, is zombies. So I went down to a zombie route, and I've got a story that revolves around Haitian zombies in there called The Adventure of the Sugar Merchant. And it has a man who's based in London, but he was based in Jamaica and ended up in Haiti and things like that. And one of the shaman from Haiti comes and chases him and turns some of the locals into zombies to help her out and things like that. So it stays well within the canon. David's quite happy with it, but it does skip over into a little bit of supernatural and leaves it a little bit open at the end.
That's fantastic. And I guess we'll finish with a little picture of you there with obviously the H.G. Wells books and a link to your Amazon profile. It's been an absolute delight talking to you, Stephen, and look forward to seeing you in many more editions of their collection.
I plan to be there. Thank you.